Alright, so we are finally set up. As you can see, I've got a second camera today. I'm going to be refurbishing, I guess, this old Samsung Chromebook. I found some information online about how I can do a full Linux install on it, and that's basically my goal for today. So as soon as we get started, but first I want to go over sort of like the basic process you can see in the descriptions. I'm going to install something called Gallium OS, which is optimized for Chromebooks. I did a little bit of reading in advance, and it seems like it's the most popular and also the best option for people who are going to be running a Chromebook. There's a little how-to guide that I found, and the tricky stuff that I'm going to be streaming today is disabling Write Protect, because that's actually a hardware thing. There's a screw in here we got to turn. So I'll be putting links to all the information in the description, but right now I just want to sort of give a visual, like video representation of that, because I haven't found one out there online. So without further ado, let's flip this guy over. We've got here our lovely screwdrivers. Let's see. We'll look at my instructions in here. And we're going to have to start taking off the back panel. But first, I want something to put my screws in so I don't lose them. And this little glasses case will be as good a container as any. This is something I learned the hard way after losing some screws. You definitely want to have a little receptacle for them, even if it's not super high tech. So that'll be right there for us as we take these guys off. And you also want to note if they're varying sizes, which ones go where. So I've got a notepad just off screen where I'll be taking notes on this. Looks like our biggest screwdriver is too big, so we'll go down to medium size, and that seems like a fit. One thing I did read about is that these screws are very easy to strip, so I'm being careful not to do that. And it seems so far like they're all going to be the same size, but we'll confirm that as we go deeper into the Chromebook. They're also on very, very tight, so it's tough to thread that needle between not stripping them, but also actually getting them unseated from the manufacturer. Yeah, so it looks like everybody on this side is going to be about the same size. Other useful tips for people who are taking apart a computer for the first time: wash your hands. I had dinner before this, and I had French fry grease all over my fingers. That would have been very bad for this computer, so I made sure to soap and water everything before getting started. Also cleared my work surface of all liquids, so I don't spill my nice tall mason jar of water on this old but still very useful computer. I've got big plans for this guy, actually. I'm excited because I've been meaning to have like a 100% Linux machine for a long time, and I think it's about time I took the plunge. Earlier I've installed something called Chromebook on this, which is a Chromebook distribution of Ubuntu, and it sort of dual boots with Google's Chrome OS. God, this screw isn't tight. Let's see if I can do this a little more delicately. Maybe he'll loosen up as I do some of these other guys. Yeah, this guy's coming out nicely. But anyway, Chromebook was a nice experience. But Chrome OS is a colossal memory hog, so by the time you installed Chrome OS and the dual boot micro crouton distribution of Linux, you only had about 1.5 gigs left of storage. And as soon as I installed like LaTeX and a couple of Python libraries, the storage was already, down to a couple hundred megabytes, which is not enough for me to do what I want to do with this guy. So part one of this plan is just going to be getting it to a state where I can install more programs on it, and then I want to use a little SD card as my sort of permanent storage where I house my actual projects and things like that. I think that'll be nice, and it'll be just a sort of like good mobile workstation. God, these guys are really tough. Let's see if I can go down or opposite sides. Maybe a bigger guy will get me better leverage on these. I wouldn't be shocked if this guy up at the top here was a slightly different size. No. Looks like I'm going to want the medium screwdriver for the whole process. He's just really tight. Alright. Next pro tip is grab yourself a paper towel and wipe off your hands if they're getting sweaty. Because, as many people know, computer folks have a reputation for being sweaty, and it is not unearned. Let's see if we can do a little better after getting nice and clean. So we'll try this guy down on the bottom again. And he just doesn't like us. Maybe there was some other kind of tool for this. One thing I may have to try is grabbing my little multi-tool and turning the screwdriver with that, so we get a little bit more grip and leverage. So as you can see here, it's just a pair of pliers, basically, that unfolds. There's other stuff on here, there's knives, there's a file, things like that, but I mostly use it for the pliers. I'm in an apartment right now, I'm away from home, so it's good to have a guy like this on hand where I can just do general purpose repairs. And I think that unseated the screw. Nope. Damn, I really got to push on this. Alright. So we're going to push. And we're going to turn. This is the hardest screw I've ever had to deal with. Let's try the other guy. Worst comes to worst, we may have to kill one of these screws. I'm not super attached to this Chromebook. I picked it up on eBay for about 20 bucks last summer. I was going to be traveling for a bit, and I just had to get basic word processing stuff done. So I got this to use Google Docs, and that's all I really used it for a long time. And I decided I'd try and program on it. That went okay, but as you recall from what I was saying earlier, could have been a better experience overall. Alright. Let's see if we can nestle this guy apart a little bit with a flat head. Just sort of dig around here and see if we can push him up from the plastic. So I have a feeling that's how it's stuck. It's kind of tight around the plastic. Maybe we can even get a little flat head in there and sort of turn it with that. Nope. Try one size bigger. It just does not want to come up. I'm starting to feel like a real gorilla. Alright. So another tip of the day. When these things happen, sometimes it's helpful to just poke around and do something unproductive, but that at least makes you feel smart, so you don't go insane. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get in between this bottom bit and the case with my screwdriver and see if I can just create a little bit of space so that I can convince myself I'm making progress. And I can't even convince myself easily, which is always a wonderful feeling. Alright. Other stuff, I've been told I may have to take off this sticker. I don't know if that's true, but it's worth getting started on because there's usually a hidden screw under a guy like this. So we just get our screwdriver under there and pop it open. No hidden screw today. That's a nice surprise. I'll save the sticker for later because I do like to keep that as a reference in case I ever need to go to customer support. It's a rare day, but it happens, so it's worth keeping documentation on hand. You also never know what kind of trivia you can learn by looking up your computer by its serial number. So we're going to give these screws another crack, and they really just do not want to budge. Let's see if there's anything under the feet. These rubber guys right here also will just pop right off. They're usually stuck in with a bit of glue, but it's nothing level grease won't take care of. And you've seen. What are you? There's a little hole down here. I don't know if you guys can see this. That's a flat surface, but you take a really close look right there. The camera autofocuses. Yeah. Just investigating. Because even when you have reference material online, you always want to double check things for yourself. Don't be a follower. Think ahead. Alright. So again, we're going to try this with the pliers. I'm just going to come in and give it a little turn. And my god, this is stubborn. Alright, let's learn together. Let's see if there's a good way to get a screw loose. Google is our friend. Let's see. Tap your screwdriver into the head with a hammer. Remove the screw with a pair of pliers. Can we get you out with a pair of pliers? And we don't have an electric drill, so we can't try that last method. I just gave it a little WikiHow lookup. Pliers are a little too big to fit in here, which is unfortunate. Let's go back to the tab we just closed. Other ways. Rubber band. That's an interesting thought. We just so happen to have some back here by our little bookshelf. So what this article is recommending we do is we get a rubber band. We hold it around the screw like this. And then we sort of dip our screwdriver into it. I'm not sure if or how this is going to work. We shall see. It still doesn't come loose. Alright, screw untightening stream. Let's go. Alright. Maybe we try a flathead, see how that goes. I'm afraid it'll just cut the rubber band. Again, we're being as careful as we can not to screw to this guy, even though we're giving him a good bit of pressure. He just doesn't want to budge. Alright, and again with this guy. At this point I'm just looking for any kind of way to boost my own morale. I know that there's a very slim likelihood that anybody's even watching, but I still just like to push through until the end. It's amazing how badly this guy refuses to budge. Alright, let's see what other tools we may have on our little shelf. Wondering off camera. Just a bunch of cables and a little knife. None of that will help. Also got a pair of nail clippers, which also will help. Let's see what we can do. One thing we're not going to do is try the same thing over and over again. That's a sure way to make ourselves unhappy. One thing we can do is we can apply even more pressure, which I'm sure will end well. So we're going to stand on this guy. And he didn't turn even a degree. Basically all that's left is the drill recommendation, which I do not want to do, both because I'd have to run out and buy a drill and because I really don't want to screw up this laptop. I'm looking at the other tools on the multi-tool. Bottle opener will probably not be helpful. Neither will this file or this little knife. Always thinking, or at least Googling. Basically, everybody's recommending a drill bit, which I, again, I'm not about to run out and buy a drill to repair a book I bought for $20. But it sure would be nice if the screw would just move. I'm not going to do that, it's just going to strip it. Maybe we will try the bottle opener. Stranger things have worked. Looks a little bit fat to go in there, but we'll see. Yeah, he's too fat. Much too fat. There's also a little loop on here. But I don't know if that'll do us any good. Can't hurt. I don't know if you guys can see what this is. It's literally just a loop. If anybody knows what the actual name of the tool is, feel free to drop it in the comment. Thank you profusely. But the loop does not seem to be doing the trick either. I think I maybe have exhausted my options, few as they are. But I can always try the big screwdriver again. Big screwdriver doesn't like it. Little screwdriver moves. Flathead. Flathead just kind of spins. And the bulkier flathead is just a little bit too large. I'm afraid there's not much I can do here. Definitely don't want to just try and pry it. Although I'm not super attached to this laptop, so I might just brute force it, and if the bottom doesn't fit back on, it doesn't fit back on. It's definitely not doing me any good the way it works now. We're finally wiggling the case here, breaking the conditioning. As a certain someone might say. That's another tip that I saw, but hammering doesn't look like it'll do any good either. Although I suppose I can try it with the actual guy. And this will be as good a hammer as any. Now we hold it and turn. Or, as the case may be, hold it, open up our multi-tool, and turn. Complicated stuff here. It's 6 p.m. on a Monday. Oh, look at that! The hammering worked. Alright, so I'll be sure not to over-tighten that when I reinstall. Let's try the same thing on this guy. And see if our hand is enough to do the trick. Again, I feel like a caveman, but if it works, it works. Alright, we need a rock, because I don't want to close the multi-tool again. What's a good hammer? Hole punch gives you a lot of leverage, it's nice and long, it's made of metal. Now we just hold that down. And I think we've unseated it. Yes, we have. Alright. Simple machines 0, streamer 1. Now we just need to take the bottom off, which is always a little adventure in and of itself. So let's organize our workspace, make sure we're nice and tidy, and proceed to jiggle whatever we can get in here. I may use a little wooden toothpick to keep from doing damage to the plastic. I'll grab that. If I decide to do this type of thing more often, I'll probably wind up buying a more sophisticated set of tools. But right now, I'll hopefully be able to get things done with the jank that I've got lying around my house. Alright, can sort of push that open. Get a little flathead in there, maybe? Yeah, that's popping off. Are you glued in? Oh no, there's those beautiful little plastic clips that everyone loves so much. So what we'll do is we'll get a file in there, which will give us much more leverage than a jewel screwdriver, or a jeweler's screwdriver. Pardon my abusive terms. And we'll start popping this way. Progress is being made. This is honestly a little bit faster than the rate I'd expected to go at. I thought we were going to be here fiddling with screws all night. But surprises can be pleasant, and I certainly will not complain about that. Yeah, let's just pop those open gently, one at a time. You know, I haven't been inside a computer since I was maybe 12 or 13. Me and my dad used to fix up old computers a lot like this. First computer I ever touched was helping my dad build his desktop machine for our home movie setup back in, I think it was the early 2000s. It was when Netflix only did DVDs. And instead of getting a Blu-ray player, he figured he'd just get a Blu-ray drive for his computer. We watched him on that. It was a simpler time. Alright. We are now officially inside the computer, and just so you know, I'm setting this down on a carefully cleaned section of table. Alright. So, we're now looking at the inside of our Samsung Chromebook. And I'm just going to clean up my tabs on my computer so I can see the tutorial well, because my brain is not particularly big. Alright, so there are two ribbon cables we have to disconnect here and here, it looks like. And there are some screws we have to undo to get this big sort of metal plate off. If I'm understanding the instructions correctly, I'm just going to take a second, third, and fourth look at everything. Because this is starting to reach the territory where we really can't go back if we make a mistake. If you mess up here, you've blown the computer. I don't know what this little guy is. So we'll poke him a little. He's made out of rubber. He should come right off. He's just covering up another screw. We can reapply him at a later date. I'm just going to look at my model number again to make sure I'm looking at the right documentation. Let's see, Chromebook 500C. XE 500 C12. Ah, off by 1. Disable right, protect. So the reason we're doing all this is to loosen a little screw in here that turns off write protect. Now, why they do this? It's mostly to protect consumers from themselves, so you don't go tinkering in this kind of thing. But I want to tinker anyway, because I'm that kind of guy. So let's see. Write protect screw. Alright, so looking at a couple of different models. They all have this kind of little target image around them. And they're all part of the motherboard right here. So I'm going to touch indirectly with the non-conductive toothpick so I don't damage it. So it looks like we got to remove this metal plate right here. And to do that, I don't know if that screw will be enough or not. Getting conflicting information from different sources. So what we do is we think carefully. Let's do some more reading here. Screw with an arrow pointing to it on the back of the motherboard. See, I don't know if you guys can see this, but there's an arrow right here. Let's bring that up and over to the camera and point out this little arrow right there. So I'm inferring that this will be the right protect screw. I don't know whether I need to tighten or loosen it, so I'll double check on that. The sources I'm investigating say remove the screw and metal ring. You have to completely remove the motherboard. Alright, looks like another Edgar album. Ah, here we go. Alright, so we've got a diagram. That is just a beautiful thing. What we are going to do, let's get started. So the screws to remove are this guy, that guy, that guy, and some folks over here who are holding the motherboard in place. We also want to undo basically all of these ribbon cables. So this will be a little bit of a process. Let's get the sticker out of the way. It doesn't belong here. Let's also move the rubber band and move our little screw receptacle out of the way so we have a bit more room to work. I'm hoping none of these screws require any hammering because I don't want to do that near the motherboard. But we shall see. This first guy is coming off pretty easily, so I'm optimistic cautiously optimistic. And again, it looks like, let's do a side-by-side comparison of that with one of the screws from earlier. Ooh, he's slightly shorter, so we're going to put him in a separate container. Always think about these things at the last minute. We're going to put him there temporarily. I'm going to take the stack of cards out of its box. We can discuss these another time, but I really like them. And we're going to put the internal screws in this guy, starting with you. Alright. Second screw down here. Ooh, I don't like how much pressure I have to put on that. Don't like it one bit. But he's coming loose, so we will just be careful. And he is easy to drop. The same length as his brother. I don't know why I'm calling all these screws he. We should probably give them a variety of genders. This screw can be she, and the next one will be they, but we'll get to them later. So, first things first, getting you. Alright, this young lady. And then this non-gendered screw. I make an off-color joke here, but that will be punching down, and that's not okay. Stay in school, kids. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, and then there's these three over here, who are going to just be a joy to work with, I can already tell. Now, this little piggy went to market. That's right, we are species neutral on this channel too. This little mandrill stayed home. Who are you? This one's different from all the rest. But we don't discriminate here. In fact, give extra accommodations where necessary. Or upon request. He's special, but he's so distinct that we don't even need to separate him out. So now we need to get to work on those ribbon cables. So the first thing is first, pop open this little bar. And release. Gently. Very gently. With the utmost care. Now you can tell when they don't make this stuff to be fixed. It's very obvious. This is not intended to be touched by human hands. At least not in my hands. Let's see if the pliers will do the trick. We're going to be very, very gentle with this piece, if he'll even come out. Oh, that's just brilliant. I think we may have broken everything, but we shall see. Okay, it's just a ribbon. Ribbon cables can come out however they like. Applying too much pressure to that. Let's see if there's any advice from this. No? Okay. That piece comes off. We'll put in this receptacle. That was just protecting the HDMI and USB ports. Now let's see if we can take you. No. Let's hold you in place. Is it nothing? I'd just be so delighted. Looks as if it's not nothing. It looks as if it's this guy. My big meaty fingers are too large to get. There's one. Do we have to take out the battery too? This guy doesn't say so. Let's have a look back. Very gently with the pliers. Aha! That's another ribbon cable. This takes too much force, we won't touch that. What about you? What if we just get just the right angle? Is there some kind of trick? Ah, it pulls up. Let's see if that's how this guy works too. You don't like that. Do you pull up? Do you push it? Do you sit up? Do you do jumping jacks? Will you let go if I ask you nicely? That should be close enough, it looks like. Now let's just find the right protect screw. Who are you? Alright. The one with the gray wire mesh under it. Alright, friends. Do not see any gray wire mesh. Do you see gray wire mesh? So it's on the side with this long guy right here. that. It says it's this boy. I don't know if I believe it. There are many such boys. Looks like that guy's just fixing those together. Let's follow our instructions. This person knows more than we do. There's one thing I've learned. It's that you should listen to people who know more than you do. Yeah, that is not a right protect screw. It simply is not. So let's replace him. And see what else may or may not be a right protect screw. Do you need to take off the copper shield? I'm misunderstanding these instructions. Conspicuous one with the gray wire mesh under it. I just don't know what this guy is talking about. I should probably take my little micro USB out. That's important. Don't want to lose it. Can you tell I haven't done this in a while? Let's try removing some tape. See what's under the tape. Nothing under the tape. Don't know what I expected, but Alright, refer back to the diagram. It'll probably be all nice for you folks if you can see what I'm looking at, but I'm a little bit in the zone right now, and I don't want to lose focus. For fear of making a fool out of myself. That doesn't seem like a way to protect the screw either. I don't think this guide is correct. Maybe it's on the other side of the motherboard. We will investigate. And enjoy our roommate's life discussion on phone. I do like living with people. It's nice that you're never quite alone. And if somebody breaks in, there'll be people to warn you. You can ward off intruders. But it's mostly just nice to know that you're not alone. There are other people like you out there in the world. It's comforting. I don't think we talk as much as we should. I'm gonna start talking to them more. Asking them how their day went, that kind of thing. It's nice to have somebody ask how your day went. Well, how'd you do today? Oh, today I opened up a computer and yelled at the internet while nobody actually watched. Well, hopefully someday this is a useful reference for somebody. Although I've seen fewer and fewer of these Chromebooks as of late. At least we're getting a little guided tour of the thing. There's the CPU. There's a lot of circuitry I don't understand because I'm not an electrical engineer. But no right protect screw. Wonder why that is. probably just a heat sink. So we can replace this guy without losing access to anything. We'll start with the screw that we forgot to put in its rightful place. I do wish this was a little easier to do, but I suppose the whole point is for it to be a little bit convoluted. Scare away the newbies. And we are not over-tightening our screws, not today. No siree. We don't do that here. Just enough to keep everything nice and snug together. I am very, very confused. I think after this shield is back in place, the next step is to just start Googling again. That's as good as anything to do. It's definitely not the most satisfying thing in the world. Until you find your answer. A lot of things are like that. It's not satisfying until suddenly it is. Let's see. Let's see what our friends on the internet have to say. If only I knew what words meant. Be very careful not to trap this ribbon cable under there. Also going to be very careful to slide this in exactly the same position it was when we took it out. Because we are not gorillas. We are not monkeys. We are men. And women and children. Where could right protect be? Oh, is that it? Is that the goo? The gray goo that everybody was talking about right there? Ah, that must be it. Wow, looks like I did a little bit more investigating than I needed to. If I had just stopped to think for a minute, the answer would have revealed itself to me. But I am not and have never been a very bright person, despite what my friends may think. I wish I had a Q-tip and a little rubbing alcohol, but the toothpick is starting to do the job. Just gotta clean off all of that conductive material, so the boy is not right protected. And as soon as that is done, you'll be able to proceed to installing a new BIOS. So, for those of you following along at home, on your Samsung Chromebook, serial number, or model number I should say, XE500C12, the right protect screw was right there. See that little screw hole we just unscrewed? We're not going to screw the screw back in because that'll turn right protect back on. But we're What you do want to do is clean up all the conductive little gray goo that gets left behind, because that stuff needs to come out. If anybody tries to do this a month or a year from now, I hope this rambling mess of a stream is at least of some use to them. Now we need to plug all of our cables back in. Process switch begins with that guy. Also encompasses our little battery friend right here. Let me go to the keyboard, actually, I'm not entirely sure. But whatever he does, he's probably important. You stay in. Where'd that little black block go? I hope this isn't dreadfully important, because I don't think it was supposed to come out quite that way. But it did. Now it's a little bit mangled. A little bit hard to put back where it belongs. If it's the mouse, I can do without it. One of the reasons I'm going to Linux 100% is that I never want to touch a mouse again. And I will explain why at a later date. But suffice it to say, you can be much more efficient that way. This has been a reasonably well-established fact among power users and the sorts of people who like to do things like go mouseless. Don't want to give up on you. Live, I say. For anyone who's wondering, I've got some talking heads playing in these headphones, because they're some of the greatest musicians ever to live and die, which I think they might all still be alive. I know David Byrne's still kicking around with his Broadway show, which I would love to go see if anybody wants to buy me tickets. But unfortunately, I'm currently a graduate student. If you know anything about being a grad student, you know it costs a lot of money, so can't exactly spring for a flight to New York or a premium ticket best-selling show. So, my best luck. How badly do I care about you? You can basically be snug. No, you're not snug at all. Alright, so this is our first major setback, as the case may be. Let's get the other major cables in place, and we'll think about what to do with that as we process it in our minds. It's one of the great lessons I've learned here at my new university, is that if you're stuck, just take a minute and come back to it later. Because you always think of the solution after you've been tossing it around in the back of your mind for a while. Alright, we're going to look back up the diagram to make sure we haven't forgotten about any cables. Let us see. So we've installed this cable. This one's given us a bit of trouble. This one never came out. This one just got put back in. This one never came out. This one just got put back in. Now, returning to the issue at hand. Difficult little friend. And my terrible, terrible fingernails that can't get much of anything done. I almost wish my girlfriend was here to help me work on this. She's not much into computers, but she's an extra pair of hands. And she likes to help with things whenever she can. She's very sweet. Let's make sure I have this oriented the right way. And try yet again. Not a professional computer repairman, by the way. Computer science, as it turns out, has surprisingly little to do with computer hardware. So if you're interested in learning how computers work at the metal, as we say, you may want to become an electrical engineer instead. Those are the sorts of people who design circuits and the like. Computer science has more to do with programming and programming efficiently, which is important in making computers work, but tends to be keyboard type work, not so much screwdriver and soldering iron. I do think computers get a bad rap. There's not a lot of great educational resources out there right now to learn about how computers actually behave in the wild. I guess there's no such thing as a wild computer, but I hope you understand my terrible metaphor. A lot of computer science stuff either starts from something very basic and abstract that's hard to sort of connect to the real world, or starts at a very high level. In other words, it just sort of assumes that a lot of stuff works. And it's not until you get to the college level that you actually learn about a lot of things like bits and bytes, and compilers, and things of that sort. But I think that would be very helpful to know about as a beginner. It's just that those are difficult topics to introduce to beginners who don't already see the value in them. A lot of computer science and science overall is written with the assumption that you already understand what everything is and why it's important. Which is why you have to go to graduate school and you can't just get a degree on the internet. Because no one's going to give you the very basics, or even some of the advanced basics, unless you're already sort of a member of their community. Alright, we've got that little piece back in place. So, all of the plugs are plugged. We now begin reinstalling our shield. Anyway, as I was saying, before I so rudely interrupted myself, it's tough to get started when you're learning about computers. And hopefully, as I do some of the actual work that I want to do on this channel, instead of the goofy stuff that I've been doing, or the semi-serious stuff that I abandoned a little while ago, I'll be able to help teach people about computers, and about a few little interesting things that even experienced programmers and computer people might not know. I think there's always more to learn in this world that we live in. Again, going back to when I was a kid and I was learning computer stuff with my dad. He works full-time in IT. He used to say that just Unix, which is an operating system, is so massive that you could spend an entire lifetime learning about it and still never understand all there is. Which is just an incredible statement, but it's also very true. There's so many tools, wonderful, amazing things built into most computers that you just have no idea about, and nobody tells you about these things. VI, which is just a tool for typing, editing text. Not word processing, which is kind of a different thing, but editing text. It's an amazing tool, and I think it's still one of the greatest programs ever written. And most people you talk to haven't heard of it. If you're interested in VI, there's some great educational resources out there, even if you just Google it. Most of the resources talk about something called Vim, which is VIM, or VI Improved. And VI stands for, I think, the Visual something or other. I have a book on my shelf, but I'm too lazy to open it because I'm just sort of chatting and not really doing a video about VI. That is maybe one day I should. Alright, so the only screw left in our little bin is the right protect screw, which is meant to be just taken out and forgotten about. Now we begin replacing the back of the computer. So we fit it into place. Anyway, VI, Vim. The reason I'm going mouseless, incidentally. And it's a text editor that is purely based on the keyboard. You move around using different keys. And it's mode-based, so instead of just starting out and being able to type, you start out in a mode where you can navigate the document. And the keys on your keyboard, I think it's HJKL. I don't even think about which keys I'm pressing anymore, I just sort of press them. Or the way you navigate around. You use other keys, like the bracket keys, to navigate by line or by paragraph. To start writing text, you have to enter a mode. You enter insert mode. And the easiest way to do that is by pressing I, which starts you at the beginning of whatever line you're at, or wherever your cursor happens to be. But you can also use hold shift and press A, which will take you to the end of your line. It'll append to the end of that line. And so that's very useful. Instead of taking your hands off the keyboard and having to click around and mess a whole bunch of stuff up, you can just navigate to the line you want, and Shift I to enter at the beginning, Shift A to append at the end, or press I to just put text wherever your cursor is. It's a very wonderful user experience, especially for something that was designed, I think, in the earlier mid-70s. I don't know, my history is not as good as it could be. I need to learn more about all kinds of history, but especially computing history, since that's my field. But yeah, and there's all sorts of efficiency improvements. There's also something called visual block mode, where you do things like highlighting, which you would normally do with a mouse, by using keys instead. You can highlight a line, or a group of lines, or, and I think this is the really interesting bit, a row of characters, not a row of characters, a column of characters across several lines. So for example, if you have a bunch of code commented out, / space before some code, you can enter the visual block mode, highlight all of those / spaces at once, and not the code that they're in front of, and get rid of them with just a few keystrokes, which takes a lot less time than going through them one at a time and deleting them, or than reaching over to your mouse and then moving around and deleting them. Alright, so as you can see, our Chromebook is now in one piece again. I've forgotten to replace that little rubber bit, but I don't think it was anything functional. I think it's just a little piece of padding material for the inside, so I'm not going to bother reopening my friend. And let's see if we can move the camera. Now I've already enabled developer mode because I did an earlier install on this Chromebook. And I'm going to not show you my password. I think that would be a very silly mistake to make, especially since I may or may not be studying computer security very soon, which is a fascinating field. It's very close to the metal, as I mentioned earlier. In other words, you actually touch bits and bytes as opposed to just programming in the abstract. And so that's cool. It gives you an opportunity to learn a lot about your computer. But it's also very interesting. It's always evolving as a field. Because as soon as you figure out a security hole, the next question is how to patch it. And as soon as you patch it, the next question is where's the next security hole. And so it's this kind of ever-evolving research process. Hopefully we won't need these screws anymore. So I'm just going to pop them on the shelf up here. Alright, and I know you can't see this, but the Chromebook is in fact in working order. Let's just spin the screen around. Got a little Google up there. And for those of you following along at home, I think this is where the usefulness of this will end. I'm just going to kind of do the rest of the install and ramble, because that's what I feel like doing. I don't want to do my homework yet, and this is a way of distracting myself from that. Right now I'm retaking discrete mathematics. I took it in my undergraduate curriculum, but that was my freshman year, and it's been 4 years since then. And the math they teach us at an advanced level is just tougher. There's a lot more to it. When I was an undergrad, they only taught us something called, I guess, regular induction. But here we have to do strong induction and inductions on things other than integers and all kinds of fancy tools about games and just kind of a big mess. Big fun mathematical mess, an interesting mess, but a mess nevertheless. And so it can be difficult and worth distracting yourself from. Alright. So we're going to enter a shell on our Chromebook. And let's see. Oh, and we need to have our USB handy. That's important too. I'm using the wrong keyboard. So maybe it's in my bash history? No, nothing in my bash history about write protect, unfortunately. Alright, so we're going to sudo. I think the flag is I. And again, I do not want you seeing my password, so I will refrain from showing it. There we go. We've got a command prompt with sudo. WP. User span flash ROM. Let's see the man page for this first before we do anything. DUT control. Or is there a help? No help. There's no DUT control at all. Hmm. Let's read some more and make sure we understand what we're doing. Always read. Hmm. Alright, so we're going to download a script from a nice internet friend who we definitely trust, even though we haven't done any research on him. Mr. Chromebox. I'm lying. I've done a little bit of research on him. Seems relatively well respected in the Chromebook community. He writes firmware stuff. Hmm. Alright, so we cannot write, even though we disabled the write protect script. Let's see if I have it in my history here. Alright. Let's see, what else do we have? Alright, let's do a little more Googling. See if we understand. Let's see if it's just Linux. Ah, here we go. So I was in the wrong directory. Let's make a new directory in our root and call it gal install. still. If I failed to disable rec protect, do I need to go back inside my computer? I would really prefer not to. Let's do some research about read-only file systems. Alright, let's change to the user. Huh. Alright. Let's try something else. Alright. We're going to dual boot over to our fun, friendly Unix half. And we'll look at things that way. And again, we're going to sudo because we like to do that. now that that's done with, let's go back and try... You don't have curl installed? Oh, come on. Alright, we're installing curl. So, I've been a little bit too quiet. Let's talk a little bit about what we're doing. The next step is rewriting the BIOS. That's the reason we needed to scratch that little screw, is because Google doesn't want you touching the BIOS. It's dangerous if you're a new user. So what I'm doing right now is I'm trying to download a shell script, which will help me do that, because I don't want to think too hard, and I want the computer to do the thinking for me. That's what computers are all about, right? We've just downloaded the shell script, bash firmware util.shell. And what this is going to do, hopefully, no, it's not going to work. So sudo apt-get install dmide sudo. Yes, okay. So the goal here is to get this script to do most of the modification for us. The reason we want to overwrite the BIOS is because Google's proprietary protective BIOS forces you to keep Chrome OS installed on your computer somewhere, and I don't want to do that. The whole point is to have a pure Linux install. And let's just give you guys a quick look-see. Got the script open. It's giving us a little menu. Okay, so we're going to read. So, which option do we want? We want a full ROM firmware. We want to read the instructions carefully. Okay, I can do that. 3. I wish to continue. Yes. And we want to create a backup. That's good. We'll plug in a different USB. Purple for backup. Backup completed. We are now downloading a ROM and getting started with the actual work the script wants to do. Anyway, continuing. The BIOS is a little operating system that helps install the big one. So by rewriting the BIOS, we open up new possibilities for our operating system. That's our goal. That's what we're doing. Then once we've gotten rid of Chrome OS entirely, we'll have a lot more free space on this beautiful machine to do what we want to do. And again, I know there's only 16 gigs of storage on here. I'm not going to put large projects, video files, anything like that. My goal is just to install a bunch of programming languages, basically. And that should only take 8 or 9 gigs. After that, I'll have some space for pulling and pushing stuff to and from Git, and I can do all my programming tasks. I'll still use my MacBook, which is the machine I'm streaming from right now to do streamy, video-y things. This will just be like a workhorse. I'll take it with me, so I don't have to take my nice, pretty MacBook anywhere. And if I lose this computer, it's not a tragedy because I spent $20 on it. That's the goal. Let's see. This may take up to 90 seconds. It's definitely taking a while. Okay. Full RAM firmware successfully installed and updated. Alright. Now, pink disk, the bootable disk. We want to turn off our computer. So we're going to leave everything and power off. Alright. So we're turned off, plugging our USB drive in. Let's plug it to this side so we don't knock it out. And one thing that's very important for you to do whenever you're installing a new operating system is plug your computer in. I don't care how much battery it's got, how long the battery lives. It's not worth the risk, man. Just plug your computer in. If something goes wrong during the install, it can be a very painful process to save your computer, and I don't want to do that to myself. So I'm going to be better safe than sorry here. Plug into the outlet on the wall, and get my beautiful child hardwired to some electricity. Yes, that's beautiful. So now instead of booting into Chrome OS, we're booting into Gallium OS. That's a beautiful little screen. Okay, lovely, lovely. Little screen here giving us status updates. Again, I wish I could show this in the future. I'll probably do a similar stream with this when I get my next computer, and I'll install something like Mint, which is a bit more serious. But this is just for my little rover. So now I'm just going to hold this up very carefully. We booted into Gallium, and it's giving me a menu. I'm going to install it in English, because that's my best language. I don't know if you can tell by my last name, but I am also Latino. I do speak the littlest, itsiest bit of Spanish, but it is not enough to do a computer installation. And we're going to log into our Wi-Fi network, so again, no password for you. Sorry, friends. Not particularly attached to my landlord, but I would like my Wi-Fi to be secure. Download updates while installing Gallium OS. And we're going to install drivers for Wi-Fi and various media formats. Good stuff. And now hopefully I can just kick back and relax and watch the fireworks. If something does happen, I will certainly notify you. But in the meantime, we can just sort of chat. What I'm going to do, I'm going to put this computer up on a little sack of papers so that if I spill my water, the computer doesn't get soaked. And I'm going to take a sip of water after I stand up. we can just have a lovely chat. So, anyway, a bit about myself. Grad student doing computer science. I'm doing this stream in particular just because I wanted a distraction from my homework. Discrete math is a pain, no matter how smart you are. I'm not that smart. So that's fun for me. Contrary to popular belief, you don't have to be that smart to go into academia. I know a lot of people who are even less smart than I am who are going into academia, and they seem to be doing just fine for themselves. I'm not sure if I want to do the full doctorate program yet. Right now I'm just doing a master's, and I'm enrolled in the professional master's program, which basically gives you like an advanced certification in your area of study. Right now I'm on the data analytics track. That's data science, which is like fancy statistics. Let's see. Alright. So we're just going to pick ourselves a username, and we're going to pick a password, which you can't see. Anyway, data analytics. Half data science, which is statistics, making models of real-world phenomena, describing them in mathematical language, that kind of thing. And the other half is basically machine learning, artificial intelligence, where instead of the traditional method where you just sort of make an equation and you make sure your equation fits, you have the computer come up with equations for you. It's really not that complicated. There are complicated ways of doing it, but the basic concept is pretty easy to understand. And I like that because I enjoy doing math and I enjoy programming, and that's sort of the best of both worlds. It's also very employable, which I appreciate. But security is also interesting to me. I also really like data structures. In my undergrad, I did some research in something called computational geometry, which is a fancy way of saying how computers do shapes. And doing problems about lines in the plane and planes in 3 dimensions and things like that. Those problems are actually very difficult for computers because we humans can sort of see things visually and make a lot of sense out of it. But a computer likes pure numbers, ones and zeros. So translating that into a language the computer can understand, and a language the computer can operate on efficiently, is a very interesting problem. I'm actually working on a project right now that's kind of tangentially related to that. It's like a little trial run of a theory that I developed in undergrad with my research supervisor, Drew Turkoglu. And so once that project is finished and I have some data and some mathematical proofs, I can show you guys a little bit about the kind of research that I find interesting. Anyway, that's a little bit about my academic background, my informal, sort of extracurricular background. Got a bookshelf. I like books. I read them sometimes. I'm really, really big on prosody, like the study of how words sound good together. I think that's a really cool thing to learn about. Some of my favorite authors, Gass, Nabokov, Joyce, Pinch, they like to play with words a lot. And I just kind of find it beautiful. It's something I'm not very good at, but it's something I'm trying to get better at. And I just really enjoy it. I think there's something very serene, very pleasant, sometimes very shocking about it. Other than that, the chessboard up there is basically for show. I'm terrible at chess, but I have a friend who likes to play, so sometimes we play. The cards up there I use a little more often. I like blackjack, I like poker, they're fun. The installation's going very slowly, in case you're wondering. The bars like it that much percent out of a lot. So we're in for a long night. But that's not something I'm terribly worried about, because the hard parts are behind us. Yeah. I am really pleased to have a Linux machine now. I think it's going to be very nice. I know Mac OS is Unix based, and that's, BSD, great, lots of fun. But I'm learning more about, the Free Software Foundation and their whole thing. And I think that it's really cool to sort of have programs where you actually know how they all work. I think that's a really admirable goal. I think it gives you a lot of information about what your computer's doing. And the more I learn about security, the more I learn that you are being spied on, particularly by the manufacturers of computers like Apple, Macintosh, and Windows PC. So the move to a more free, more open source computing environment, I think, is going to be good for me. I'm going to enjoy that. The big irony, of course, is that YouTube is the most closed source secretive service ever, but you can't really escape YouTube, so I'm not worried about that. I'm not going to be a purist. I'm more just sort of interested in getting freer. I think that's a nice sort of compromise. What else can I ramble about in this unsophisticated format? Boy, I should have had notes or something. Other things I'd like to talk about on this channel, maybe. Definitely want to do some books, or some videos that are just about books that I like, books that I think people should read more often. Nabokov, who I mentioned, is one of my favorite authors, writes a lot, obviously. He's an author, that's what he does. And I think people kind of focus in on his more, like, clickbaity books, I guess. Like, Lolita's a clickbait book. Like, it's like, oh, bro, dude, social taboos, we're gonna violate them. We're gonna scare all the wine moms, right? But I think a lot of his better books are actually a little lower key. Panin, I read recently, I'm probably pronouncing it wrong, is a lot more autobiographical and a lot funnier. And I also think it's a really, like, sort of subtle, beautiful look at what Nabokov is like when he's not trying to shatter every possible taboo. He also wrote a book about a chess player that I'm interested in reading. I think it's called The Defense, and it's on my to-do list. One of the annoying things about liking books is that the people you know all go, oh, well, this guy likes books, let's buy him some books. And then they buy you more books than you can read at a time. Like over here on this shelf, I say I've read maybe 2/3 of these, and the rest, like, I still need to get through. Like this guy right here, Out Stealing Horses. It's a nice book. I'm about 2/3 of the way in. I haven't read it as quickly as I should have, but it was a gift, and it's one of those things where, like, if somebody gives you a book, you have to read it and then tell them what you thought. Chronicle of Death Foretold, Wide Sargasso Sea. Those are both gifts from my girlfriend. I really like Garcia Marquez, so I just sort of asked to borrow this one. She said keep it, because she doesn't like Garcia Marquez. Wide Sargasso Sea, she's actually a really big fan of. She's very feministy, as I hope everyone is. And it's a very feministy book, so I'm looking forward to that one too. The Hanging Artist is written by a friend of a friend, John Steinhagen. And I love Franz Kafka, and that's a book about Franz Kafka as, like, a sort of fictional character. Franz Kafka, private detective. So I'm looking forward to getting into that one. Stuff on here that I have read. Eyes, the William H. Gass short story collection. Beautiful all the way through. I wasn't huge on most of the stories at first, but the more I reread them, the more I warmed up to them, and I think now that they're all, like, super charming projects. Aristotle, he's Aristotle, you gotta read him, it's important. G.K. Chesterton, the Father Brown stories. So Chesterton is a Catholic theologian and also, like, popular writer, and Father Brown stories are a bunch of, like, detective stories. They're all, like, between 10 and 20 pages about Father Brown, who is a Catholic priest and also a detective. And he uses, theological, godly methods of investigating crime, which I think is a super cool approach to crime. There's always questions like, why do people do things that are wrong? From whence cometh evil? That sort of thing. Removing the installation medium and pressing enter on our Gallium OS Chromebook. But yeah, I think G.K. Chesterton is also a fascinating dude. He was a big figure in his day, just in terms of like him being a popular sort of icon. He's like a 6'3", hundreds of pounds dude. I'm gonna log into this. And he wore a cape and he walked around with a cane. And he was just the craziest craziest guy. Very famous for his like witty little like clapbacks, comebacks, aphorisms, some people call him. Big debater, really famous, well known for his public debates with George Bernard Shaw, who was kind of like a super secular dude, and they had like a really big clash of ideologies back in the turn of the century. There's so much beautiful history in that guy's life, just like the way times have changed and the way secularization happened. Yes, software update time. So enough about G.K. Chesterton. Let's do the much more exciting work of updating our operating system. Gallium OS update. Oh, we've got to put in our password again. Alright, we're updating. Let's see, what else? Life of Pi, that's a classic Oprah Book Club, like, theological book. It's alright. It's one of those things that you have to read if you're interested in questions about God and religion, just because it's so influential. I've got a little Shakespeare anthology here. I use that as a prop. I actually do read it. The big book for me, though, is this beauty right here, 2666, Roberto Bolaño, a Latin American author, really cool dude, political theorist, anti-fascist, writer of big, thick books, but also thin, catchy books. I was introduced to him when a friend of mine recommended something called Nazi Literature in the Americas, which is a fictionalized anthology of little biographies of Nazi authors living in the United States and Latin America, and also Canada. There's one guy from Canada, I think. And it's fascinating because, like, Nazism is obviously, like, horrible and monstrous and one of the worst movements ever to exist on the planet. But what Bolaño does, and this is like a testament to his, like, mastery of fiction, is he portrays Nazis as, like, not only sympathetic but perfectly understandable people. He gives you a very deep sense of what culture gives rise to racism and fascism, what kinds of personal feelings, what kinds of animosities, what kind of tension with society, just the sorts of people who become political extremists. And it's fascinating because it's such a different look at politics, as rather than centering it around like a person's coherent belief structure, what was their mother like? What was it like for them growing up? Were they rich or were they poor? Did they grow up in the country or the city? That's all these sort of factors that you don't often think about that really contribute to a person's belief structure and the kind of things that they put out into the world. So that was a fascinating read. And 2666 is more of that. It's this 1,000-page epic book. It spans... Basically, it's 5 little books all smushed together, and each one is like a different decade. There's one that spans like the entire lifetime of a German author. There's another one that spans the lives of like literary critics who respond to his work. There's another section that's about a series of mysterious murders in South America that may or may not be racially motivated. And as the book unfolds, as you read it for the second and third time, you start noticing all these connections and all this meshing between all these events and how one thing leads to another. Not just in terms of like literal cause and effect, but also thematic sort of causes and effects, how a theme gets introduced in one book and carries over through to the other. It's just beautiful. And if I were a literature PhD, that is, if I didn't have to worry about money, I would write a thesis on that any day of the week. I think it would be a fabulous, fabulous project. And then at the very end here, The Bonfire of Vanities, which is something I liked a lot more in high school, but I wanted to reread it to see if I'd still enjoy it. It's an okay book. Tom Wolfe is a very important sort of conservative literary voice. He's an interesting guy, and he revamped this sort of like loud prose. Became very emblematic of like 80s and 90s literature, where there's like a lot of weird punctuation and funky syntax and characters speaking in dialect, which I think is really cool. It's also very socially aware in its own way. It's very keenly aware of what's okay and what's not, and how powerful people can get away with bending the rules, which I think is a fascinating subject. I mean, the phrase that he not coins but uses over and over again in the book is the master of the universe. The main character is a stockbroker, and he pulls the levers that make the rest of the world move. And it's about how if you're a master of the universe, well, really, do you have to be faithful to your wife? Do you have to do this? Do you have to do that? And how these people often feel entitled to things that they really aren't. And I think that's a fascinating thing to look at. So that's the fiction on my bookshelf. Nonfiction, Aristotle, civil liberties, and a little bit of stock market stuff. I'm not sure how deep I want to get into the stock market, but it's something I should at least learn about because it's important. I've also got the classic O'Reilly Press books over here, some reference stuff, because when you're doing computing, it's important to know what your computer actually does. I've got a little C++ manual there. Full disclosure, I have not yet written a line of C++, but it's one of my winter projects, I guess. Once I'm done with the quarter, I'm either going to teach myself C++ or D, which are both compiled languages, and they compile right down to machine code, so they run nice and fast. And I think those will be cool for some projects I want to embark on later. Right now, I mostly do my programming in Java, because that's what I learned in undergrad. And I'm taking a Python course right now, so I'm doing a lot of Python too. Python's great for getting something like hacked together, doing it as fast as possible. But I wouldn't write production code in it. I wouldn't start a business and use Python. I just use it for assignments and things like that, personal hobby projects. Although there are differences of opinion. Some people think Python is just the greatest thing since sliced bread. You should use it for everything. I don't want to start a theological war. It's just my opinion. Looking at the progress bar, our install is stuck at 99%, which may be good or bad. Oh, it's good. It's just finished. You press enter to close the window. Let's turn it off, I guess. Shut down. Do a full shutdown. We'll reboot to make sure things are still behaving the way they're supposed to. And then we can call it a night, and I can do what I'm supposed to do tonight, which is homework. So, lessons learned today. Number 1, read the documentation. That helped us out in more than one spot. Having docs is always helpful. Having more than one source of documentation is very helpful. Another lesson learned, use the tools you have available. Pulling out the multi-tool saved me from some very difficult screws. Lesson number 3, don't believe everything you read. I had conflicting reports about where the right protection screw was, and turns out all of them were wrong. So, just goes to show you always have to be able to think for yourself, even if you're reading what seem to be reliable sources. And your final lesson of the night is have fun with it. I honestly had a really good time streaming this. I know no one's watching. I do not care. I just like talking at the camera. I like airing my feelings out. I like showing off my books. And I like this install. For those who are curious, Yes, we had a 100% functioning machine with Gallium OS. There's the beautiful default screen. We can probably pull up a terminal. There's a nice little terminal window. There it is. We've named our guy Rover because he's going to go roving. He's going to go away from home while my MacBook sits pretty in its rest. Alright. Thank you everyone who eventually one day watches this. I may or may not go back and timestamp everything. Probably not because I'm a lazy piece of shit. But I hope this is helpful to somebody in some way, somehow in the future. So long.